Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Eddie Marcus here this Sunday morning, early this Sunday morning. And I am here, as always, thinking of you. There has been an expression, I've always heard it seems, that when I was a child, I act as a child. And you know how we talk about that. But in time, things changed. And when I became a man, the expression goes. Now, here is the question. What does that mean when I became a man? I became a man. What does that mean? Well, that has been interpreted in many ways. One way is to believe that when you get 16 years old, if you're a male or female, man, woman, whatever, and there was a time you were treated as a man or woman at 16 years old. Then something happened, changed the rules, went up to 18, and from 18 to 21. And others might have concluded that you became an adult when you were able to leave home, whenever that was. And some might say that you became an adult when you were able to take care of yourselves. All of these are expressions about what you might consider as being an adult, and it varies between cultures. And so that might be something that is not common amongst you. But at the same time, parental control is broken. You've stepped out on your own. Now it's you. And so we say, that's when I've become. But have you really become a man? All the time you were existing, you had rules and regulations that you had to follow, whether you agreed with them or not. It was to your benefit to follow them. And so now you walked out on your parents, not walked out, you left happy. Everybody was happy. Things are looking good. For many of you, maybe not so good for others. But you recognize that there's still a voice over you. It's the government. And now that government becomes just like that parent. That government dictates. And this government's supposed to be accepted because it's reflective of a collective of the population. It is speaking from the population's perspective, utilizing the system which is in play, the democratic process, they say. And so when the government speaks for the nation, the government speaks for the people. How many times your parents told you to do something and you did it, you didn't want to do it, but you did it just because they asked you? How many times your parents asked you to do something you didn't want to do and you didn't do it? Not to please your parents, but to please yourself. Not even concerned about what they said. How did you feel when you did what you felt was the proper thing to do? How did you really feel? So what happens when your parents do that to you? Do they ever know? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But when they do, what does it mean? They don't trust you as much? They can't count on you as they did before? Or does that really matter? Is a question that many of us must have. But if we can think that way about our parents, then we also must think that way about our system of government. What if our system of government is telling us to do something we don't believe in? What if our system of government represents something that you, the person that of who have arisen, see as the proper way of doing things? What is the proper way of doing things? Consider what the system says. Consider what you say. What is the proper way? And if yours is any better, why? And to whom are you advocating it to? That's the question. All of these things happen, ladies and gentlemen. So when I became a man, when I became an adult, when I put away my childish ways, when I stopped listening to my parents, when I stopped listening to the government, what happened to make me stop listening to the government? You became an adult. What does that mean? Becoming an adult, ladies and gentlemen, really means a lot of things. And no, I don't believe one person can just put a finger on it. But I think that one of the things that must be considered as very, very, very important is that when you become a man, you know the way of life. You know the way of life. We're not talking about what your parents told you. Your parents told you what their parents could tell you. We're not talking about what the system can tell you. The system can tell you what the system can tell you. And yet what your parents told you, most of it was proper. What the system tells you, most of it is proper. But like that, your mother was lacking, the system lacks, and only the spirit of truth can open your eyes to see that. And that's when you become a man or a woman, when you stand up for what's right. You stand up for what's righteousness. I heard a lady this morning, Miss Lake. She's running for office someplace in some state. And her philosophy, when listening to her spew out that sickness, and they are carrying themselves around the population saying, elect me, I want to show you how to make life better. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard something called maggots. Now maggots, they are when you just lay food around it, drop around, and flies get a chance to drop eggs on them, and then the eggs, and these little maggots, little worms, and it makes everybody sick to see them, because if you see them, that kind of means you kind of nasty, because you didn't do the proper things to get rid of the stuff that's causing these maggots. This is what is happening, it seems, across this country right now. America has always been an okay country. It wasn't they say they were the best, but all nations say they were. They caused a lot of pain and suffering. But nothing like what this evil thing started when Donald Trump came on the scene. I mean, you saw ugliness at its highest order. And now, look what it has turned so many people into becoming. Filth like maggots all across the country, trying to say the most ugliest things, trying to divide you in every kind of possible way they can, just to get your support so they can be in office and say that they run the maggot show. What do they have to offer you? They are not saying anything. I heard the Republicans say the Democrats now are failing. So what we'll do, the Republicans will come into power. We'll take over. We'll start doing things. And I'm asking you, the American people, do you hear what's being said? This Republican, then when they had the positions of power, they tried to destroy this country. And all of the nasty, ugly things that they did still having its effect today. We're dealing with it in every state from this group that's saying the Democrats are doing bad. Let them back in. Like you didn't see what you saw, that you didn't hear what you heard. Now, I'm not saying the Democrats are anything to praise, but they're nothing like those, like what you had the last time. Like that what is asking you to put them back in office. And then they're asking the worst part of them to put you back in office. Like you gonna do it. And you just might do it. Why? Because you are still children. Just like you're under your parents, you're under your system. Why? Because you don't see clear. You are still children, and you are listening to the power that could take a switch and whip you. They can beat you down. That's what you respect. That power that can throw you in jail. You don't respect the power that can free you because you don't know freedom. In order to receive this kind of freedom, you have to have a compassion for one another. In order to receive this kind of freedom, for something, somewhere, there's something within you that wants to know the truth. And what is the truth? What is any truth? The truth, my friend, is that you live your life as happy as it can possibly be. And in order for that to happen, I said you, I mean every last one of you. And when that is to happen, it is because you respect the truth of life. And that means respecting everyone else. And you recognize that you're partners in everything that's done. Partners in everything that's done. You're not competing against one another. That's a big lie that's causing all this maggots to grow around this country. And somebody, if you know the truth, they got to stand up and tell you, I'm not against the government. I'm just telling you where the government is wrong. The evidence of the wrongness of the system of government is the pain and suffering, the poor, the poverty that exists in this country, where people can't have access to housing like they're supposed to, when people can't have access to education like they're supposed to, when people can't have access to health care like they're supposed to, when people can't have the careers that gives them their greatest joy, that allows them to engage themselves in the process of creating the goods and services that have been determined by the people that's so important to us all. And by so doing, make them part owners of all that exists, and you don't need to go into debt, you don't need loans, you don't need money, you don't need contracts. It is you being who and what you have been made to be, and giving the power, that invisible power, all of the glory, because you're getting your greatest joy from it, and you're doing it, and the world is benefiting from it. When you know that, then you speak to the government like this, so the government can speak back to you and tell you you need to make changes by themselves engaging themselves in this process. And if they fail to see it, then you must see it. Because if you don't, these maggots will overcome you. And who are the maggots? Anything that does not yield everything it possibly can to your freedom, to your life. If it doesn't, it's a cancer to one another. Now, that's the truth. And you know where that comes from? I call that God. You know, I grew up hearing about a God. I never saw people actually translate what they talked about in the good book. I never saw them translate that. And when I say translate that, you know, Jesus lived. And Jesus had a way of translating stuff. I'm talking about action. And I never saw any of that kind of stuff. I saw people give soup lines and have charity. I saw people where they would get their old clothes and didn't want to throw them away, so you give it to people who didn't have anything, and they appreciated it. I know I got some of your clothes. I came out of Mississippi where poverty was there, and your clothes coming down there. I was at that little center point getting some of the clothes. I can go to school looking like I had some decency. I remember that. And I still see that all over this country. And we haven't grown anywhere. And I know why. Because you're still children. I want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, that the power is in your hands. But as long as you call yourself getting away from your parents, but you're still trapped. You have to do the same thing to wherever there is pain and suffering. Not that you're trying to fight anybody. You're not arguing with anybody. You're just standing for what is right. And when you stand for what's right, I mean really stand for what's right, then the power that gives you the ability to stand for what's right, that power fights your battles. That power cannot lose. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for giving me this your time on this wonderful Sunday. And I'll talk to you later. Goodbye.